Greetings, team. So we've played 20-ish episodes. We've completed the main quest once in Starfield. I'm probably going to wrap up Starfield videos for the time being because let's face it, I'm sort of done and no one's watching them. So, so for the 5 of you that are watching Starfield, thank you. Appreciate it. I've had fun with the game, but and again, not to add to the pollution. Well, I'm going to add to the pollution. Let's not even say not to do. Let's just say what we're doing, which is adding to the pollution of Starfield opinion videos. Um, and so I do ask the question, where do I end up after 100 hours? So, so let's start with sort of a light. Let's start with a little lightweight, pleasantries here. Um, I think the gun combat's pretty decent for a Bethesda RPG. It is a decent shooter. It's certainly one of the better. Like it's better than Fallout 3. It's better than Fallout 4. It holds its own. It is fun, and it's a fun enough shooter for an RPG. So I give that is a high point um, in the game. It's not obviously a shooter. It's not a shooter level, and it's not like, and it's not quite to the level of say a Borderlands. And obviously, I'm thinking of something to type here as we speak. They do rely on sort of a prefix suffix kind of system. I do wish there were just a few more variations on a few more guns, a few more wacky ones, that kind of thing. I do wish there was just a little bit more variation because I do feel it just comes down to, hey, I leveled up, I get the next tier of gun, find the one that I like, and just I keep it for the rest of that tier, and I'm sort of done with it. It would be cool if there was some neat variations that then changed your play significantly. And I think Borderlands does that fairly well with some of the uniques um, and some of the legendaries and so on. Starfield isn't that awesome, but I do like the gun combat, and I do think it's a net positive for Starfield. We're going to keep with the positive here. I think the main quest is strong. It's not great. It's not genius writing or anything, but we go. But how about and it is. I will say this: it is generally repetitive. Right? Go get an artifact. Go find a temple, and those in and of themselves are not really great parts of the main quests. And let's add to that. Let's include in that. Let's include faction quests in that. I think faction quests are let's just say that faction quests are also strong. There you go. Let's just say that. Let's say faction quests are also strong. So main quest is strong, faction quests are strong. I think the faction quests are better than the main quest, but I do think the plot points in the main quest are they hit home pretty well and it's pretty cool. I'm not going to spoil anything. I don't care. Probably everybody's ahead of me in this game anyway. Um, but I do think it's cool, and I think the way they do New Game Plus is actually cool and sort of neat. Having said that, I think these are the best quests in the game, right? I think faction quests are the best quest lines in the game. I think the main quest is the best quest line, that I have seen in the game. Um, Having said that, I will say my main gripe is simply I just wish there wasn't space magic. Sort of. I wish they could have held together a good sci-fi story and just made it a sci-fi story as opposed to, and I get it because sci-fi is actually harder than fantasy, strangely enough, in some ways. In fantasy, the hero's journey typically is the main story, and you can do that in sci-fi for certain, but sci-fi is very often man versus environment or man versus technology, versus like a hero's journey kind of vibe. And of course, an RPG is pretty hero story ish usually, so I sort of get it. But man, I just wish I could have flown around in my spaceship and not be collecting mystical artifacts to get Dragonborn shouts to become the Dragonborn, um, and then be the one, right? You know what I mean? Like I sort of wish there was less of that. I wish I could have been a gritty space trader, plying the space lanes, trying to keep my ship running. So I wanted more Firefly and less, not, which had a little bit of space magic with the um you know the ninja girl. Um, so I suppose I wanted more Firefly and less Star Wars. Kind of. Oops, Star Ward? Nope, that's not it. Star Wars would be good. That's what I wish. But I do think generally the main quests are a positive. Are they great? Is it as good as Cyberpunk's main story? No, it's not. Is it as good as The Witcher? No, not even close. It really isn't. But it was decent and it's positive overall. So I am going to make that a positive. Um, so I also enjoyed ship combat, but I sort of am a little neutral on ship combat. I think it's fun enough, but I think that ultimately there's it has the fake choice problem, where it gives you, oh man, so there's all these things to do when you're flying your ship, right? There's all these variables. Oh well, your ship has mobility, so does it turn fast? Your ship has different types of weapons. There's a bunch of different types of weapons. There's EM, there's laser, there's ballistic, there's missiles, there's particle beams. So you have five different types of weapon systems. Six, actually, no, five. Five. Let's just stick with that. Five. You have turrets. You have so you have all these different things, and it would be great if it felt like any of that mattered. But ultimately, in my opinion, you should just find the most efficient particle beams you can. Put as many of those as your ship's power can handle. Put the biggest reactor in your boat. Put as many particle beams as that reactor will tolerate, and do that and be done with it. Because everything else is either suboptimal or it's not optimal enough to validate the mental overhead of putzing with all that crap, right? So someone might come and say, no, 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 dude, lasers and ballistics are the way. And you go, okay, that's great. But I don't think until I forget to, I don't press the right mouse button, and there's a lot more sort of, I say physical effort. That's a weird way to put it, but there's a lot more sort of putzing to get that to work. And I'm actually guessing it is not anymore. It actually does not do anything faster. Although, again, I did see a guy who was, did the lasers and ballistics and maxed those out, and he seemed to be pretty darn good. On the other hand, I had like five or four or five or six of those damn things on particle beams on a ship, and it was just like, yep, done. It's funny because in No Man's Sky, um, at some point you just go, well, I just went, give me the best lasers or whatever that I could get, the beams, and I would fly in reverse, and then just cut the ships down as they approached, and that was about it for nine times out of 10. Those battles could just be fought with that same thing, and I think Starfield's 9 times out of 10 can be also. And so I think there's a lot of choices which are mostly meaningless. Um, and you need to be, it just needs to be more impactful. There needs to be a good reason to experiment, and there needs to be a good reason to, to try out different things. Why, there, you should have a good reason to just put a missile boat on your damn thing, on your ship. Just a big old missile. I have 10 missiles, and that's all I got, and we fire it, and we blow ships up like that. But there really isn't. In a lot of ways, you just put particle beams on your ship, and you're good enough, and that's the easiest thing to do. So it's that illusion of choice, which I'm calling, as I said, I put the particle beam problem. So I liked ship combat, but I think it falls a tiny, tiny bit flat. Um, so there you go. So, and as you can see, this is starting to devolve from awesome to less awesome, right? So I think missions are a weak point generally. I said the main quest and the faction quests are strong, and you will spend a lot of time doing those. But I think the individual, and when I'm talking about those, I'm talking about certain high points in the quest lines, not individual quests themselves, if that makes any sense, right? Like the main quest is a dozen quests, right? In the main quest line is a dozen quests. I think in general the missions are actually a weak point in the game. I think, and I have a theory for this, which other people have sort of beat me to it on videos. I think so. I'm not that clever. So, and I think one of the main reasons why I feel like this, I don't think the missions are actually any worse than missions in Fallout 4 or missions in Skyrim. Um, so here you go. So I'm actually gonna delete those, and I don't think that the missions are any worse than Skyrim or Fallout 4. I think that, though, what Skyrim and Fallout 4 fall back on, and I think Starfield tried to fall back on it, but ultimately it fails, is that Skyrim and Fallout 4 can give you the simplest fetch quest. Go to point A and bring me back 3 apple pies. Just and come back. Done. Dumb quest. And you could, in Skyrim or Fallout 4, though, you can't just get there. You might be able to if you've already picked up that fast travel point. But if you're using, say, survival mode and you cannot fast travel, or you have not yet been to the point in question, you have to walk there. And having to walk there in Skyrim or Fallout 4 almost guarantees that you will come in contact with something that will interest you and distract you. The journey, because Skyrim and Fallout 4 are more akin to a hex crawl in a tabletop, where you hand the players a map and go, here you go. You've heard that there's cool shit here, here, and here. Get to it. And then they go, well, we want to go to this point, and we want to go to this point. And each of those points, there's something there to then engage with. Skyrim and Fallout 4 have that. Playing Requiem, playing Do Not Go Gentle, the Requiem mod list, that first run from Whiterun to Rorikstead is almost guaranteed to be interesting. You're almost guaranteed to run afoul of a fort of bandits, or stumble into a saber cat, or a bear, or 3 wolves, or whatever. It is an eventful trip. It's interesting. I think the problem in Starfield is they effectively just use the same formula that they use in Skyrim and Fallout 4. But the problem in Starfield is you don't really have that physical map. There is a map, it does exist, and you could even say, well, there's a reason for the fast travel, and I agree, there's a reason for the fast travel. You should be fast traveling in Starfield, and that's okay. But at that point, if you have the same fetch quest, go to planet A, pick up 3 apple pies, and then return. Uh, I'm gonna fast travel to planet A, land, pick up the pies, and fast travel back, and done. And I've engaged with nothing outside of that quest, and it takes 6 minutes as opposed to 60 minutes, and I have no interesting stories and nothing I've engaged with other than the fast travel point, killing the 10 pirates which were guarding the pies, and returning fast travel back home and getting the quest done. Um, that's the difference. They use the same formula for so it's akin to in a tabletop game of just having, well, we have plot points. I'm not going to give you a map and tell you wander around and find stuff, or you have to traverse this distance. I'm going to have plot points. Okay, so you know, go go get me the pies from this city. Okay, we go to the city. And the GM goes, well, you make it to the city. Done. Um, Now, what that means, it's not necessarily bad, but then once you get to the plot point, it better be interesting. And that's the kicker. They didn't change the formula realizing that they had this problem. So I think they sort of missed what made Skyrim and Fallout missions so awesome when they were just as dull as Starfields, typically. Um, they missed out on what made that a cool experience. And what makes it a cool experience is there's something to do. The journey is the quest in Skyrim or Fallout, not the quest. And in Starfield, what they had to have done was make each plot point super interesting. So, and I think what they thought was going to happen was, okay, I go to point A, I fly, I jump to planet A and I land. And as I go to planet A, as I'm walking through the city, I hear people over, talking, chatting, and I get that little notification in the upper left saying, hey, you should talk to Bob. He has something for you, and it gets shunted into your activity list. And I think what they expected was that I was walking through the city, I would immediately be distracted um, by all these different conversations I hear, or when I stop into the coffee shop and the lady needs me to steal something from the coffee shop from the government, that I would then be going on all these side quests, and that would fulfill the same purpose as the journey in Skyrim. And I think they miscalculated because when you get to your destination, you actually just want probably to get the quest done. And so I would ignore all of those. I might go back to them if I thought it was interesting enough, but it was not impeding my journey. It wasn't on the way, if that makes any sense. So I didn't do any of that crap. I fast traveled, got the pies, fast traveled back. I'm done. Um, so I think they miscalculated on what all of that, how the player would engage with the side quests. And the funny part is, it's not side quests in Fallout 4 or Skyrim which distracts you. It is the hex crawl. It's the geographical, the journey, the traveling, the seeing something in the distance as you're walking and getting there, being attacked, being ambushed, etc. There's not enough of that in the Starfield, and the problem then is, again, the quests aren't any worse than they were. You're just noticing them because they are exposed. Um, so there you go. And so I do think that in general, the missions are actually a weak point, even though there's some high notes in the main quest. So we will put that down at least. Again, oops, I just but yeah, like if you just took entangled and the UC the grunt work, those missions, you would think this is great. This is awesome. These are awesome. These are awesome. This is an awesome game with these awesome missions. And then you take one like First Contact, where you meet the ship of 200-year, the generational slower than light ship, and you resolve it in all of 10 minutes. Um, so I think generally the missions are unfortunately a weak point, and we're going to stick with that. Um, this one sort of hurts a little bit more than even the missions because I can live with not great writing because I don't usually care that much about how awesome the writing is in an RPG if I am having a great time doing the repetitive because I mean typically at heart I'm an MMO player. I want to do repetitive stuff and progress. And yeah, if there's a cool story here and there, that's really awesome and that yeah, that's like the icing on the cake. But the meat of the game to me is doing all the stuff that the game wants me to do and engaging with all the systems and progressing my character. And I think, unfortunately, Starfield, there's a weak point in Starfield. I think I was super excited when I saw the 5 skill lists and the 84 or some odd skills that you have, but unfortunately, too many of those skills are duds. Too many of those skills come straight out of the perk list in, say, the Fallout games. Too many of them just are boring. They're duds. They don't do what you need them to do. They don't make enough impact, and so on. They're not worth it. They're just not worth it. Um, there's a few, and frankly, the ones that do make an impact. So let's add that actually, and a lot of skills that do make an impact are boring. They are boring, right? It's ooh plus 10% damage. You know what? That's pretty dull ultimately. So yes, you should if you're gonna. I mean, you should take ballistics all the way to level 3 or 4. You should take rifle to level 3 or 4. 100%. You should take the marksman skill. Those are impactful skills. They are actually very useful. They're also pretty dull ultimately. Yep, I did 10% more damage. My 60 went to 66. That is very exciting. And so that's I think the problem. I think the problem is out of those 80 some odd skills in that in those trees, how many of them actually do anything worthwhile, and then of those how many are interesting? And unfortunately that number drops super fast. So like commerce, you should, I mean, commerce is not terrible, you don't need it, but you could take it and it'll get you more money faster. But okay, plus 5% to sale prices, minus 10% to purchase prices. It's not exciting. It's just not exciting. Um, there needed to be a lot more. So that's it. Too many duds, and the ones that do have impact are dull. I think that's absolutely the case. Um, I think the other one, which really stinks, is that there's not a lot of replay value in those skills either. There's not enough play styles expressed in the skills and the skill tree. So if you think about Skyrim, even vanilla, let's not even think about Ordinator or any of the mods. But if you look at how many playstyles are expressed in the skill system, there's not many. There's a couple. Um, in Skyrim, you could go, well, I can just imagine in my head, big, strong, two-handed fighter. I could go maybe sword and board, but that's not super different. But let's pretend I can do spell sword, so sling destruction. Hit someone with a sword. I can do pure mage. I can do stealth archer. So there's a good base of. Well, I played last time as an orc berserker with a two-handed axe, and this time I'm going to play a high elf mage with destruction and alteration. Bam! There you go. Those are two hugely distinct play styles. Um, I'm stealth archer. So if you think about how do I approach the nest of bandits, or in Starfield's case, the infinitely generated point of interest with 20 ecliptics in it, how do I approach that? And the answer is, I'm going to snipe at a few guys from long range, and then I'm going to, when I need to move in, move in. Now, Fallout 4 also has a little bit of this problem because Fallout and Starfield are gun games. And so there aren't that many ways to approach combat. You're going to shoot them with your gun. I mean, yeah. You might have a grenade launcher, or you might have a shotgun, or whatever, and maybe, but it's very close. And so you need to account for distinct play styles. And I think Fallout 4 Vanilla does not do a very good job of this either. So I think Starfield suffers from a lot of the same thing, which is there's no significant difference really in pistols and rifles and shooting someone with a minigun. There's just not enough difference. Done. There's not enough play styles in there. And so where do you get those play styles? Well, I think you would have had to have really thought about the missions, how they were, how the points of interest were constructed to make, say, well, you could stealth through this entire thing, or just knock people out, or um, you could talk your way literally through, or disguise your way through an ecliptic base, or right. I mean, I think that you would have had to have really worked, and I just, I think Bethesda cookie cuttered this similar template from Fallout 4 and thought this is good enough. And I don't think it's good enough. And I didn't think it was good enough in Fallout 4 either, really. So I think you'd had to have done something to make the distinct play styles and sort of figure out what those distinct play styles were going to be, and then encourage those in your skill trees. So, make a play style which is lots of drugs, right? Right. So make the jet boost kind of right amp play style, but make that worthwhile. If you put enough points into it, you then become a super killing machine. Or, make a pistol play style where you can disarm your opponents and maybe disable them. Um, I don't know exactly. I haven't put a ton of thought into what the answer is, but and maybe there is not a great answer. I do think that there is sort of a weird, you know, in computer RPGs especially, you do have the problem of, well, 9 times out of 10 the answer is combat, and so how am I going to do my damage, or how am I going to avoid my damage? And if you don't have a lot of ways to get that done in your game, then the characters will look very samey. And I do think that a second playthrough of Starfield, the characters will look very, very samey. Um, that's unfortunate, but that is true. I think there's no good reason to say go for into gastronomy, and for a cooking playthrough or whatever, right? I just don't think there's a lot there. So let's go the last couple. I think the other sort of sin is that there's a lot of systems locked behind skills in terms of crafting and base building. Um, and I think there's a lot of, and not a lot of thought to what that means when they're a lot, so if you want to build a base, you probably ought to put some crafting points, and maybe it really just is, it's probably just crafting and ship design are where, and melee are where the systems are locked behind skills. But even using an EM weapon to knock someone out, which by the way is hideously ineffective, really, because you still have to do something with, like, they need to be knocked out and downed and done and taken care of instead of crawling around and waiting to get back up, kind of thing. But systems are locked behind skills. But the problem is there's not. I mean, you have to want to engage in those systems. So it's this weird vibe of, you don't have to build a base, but you can build a base. But if you want to build a base, you got to put half a dozen points into it. But there's no penalty to not do it. But you could do it, right? There's this weird. You have to be willing to lock people out of stuff occasionally, or make this worth getting into at the expense of something else. And I don't think they do enough of that. Um, and it's a fine line to walk, because I do think Bethesda's philosophy in Fallout and Skyrim, especially, the more recent games, has been one playthrough you will do it all. You'll be able to do it all. You can become the head of the Mage Guild and the head of the Thieves Guild and a scoundrel and a hero and a paladin, and you can do it all. And it's very much the you're the one power fantasy where you can do everything. And I think, you know, I, and so what that does is it means you can't make a system that someone's not going to be able to engage in easily, or you have to allow them to not engage in it and not it doesn't impact anything. So for instance, it would have been cooler maybe if outposts were tied to exploration in some meaningful way. Oh, I can't get to that system because it's remote and I need an outpost to refuel my ship. But you can't do that because we don't want you to have to build outposts. What that means, though, ultimately is it's probably not. I mean, it's not that worth it. Like, who cares? I don't care anymore. And so again, that just adds to the number of duds on the skill list. Now you can have the opposite problem too. I play Fallout 4. I play a mod called Horizon, and crafting is the focus. And then what that also then does is it means that you have to be putting all your points into the system, which becomes the key system, which is crafting typically, and that's where you're spending all your points. So I think there are answers to this, but 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 you'd have to make a slightly different game, right? A lot of times the answer is you have to make those trees distinct, separate, and let the player progress on both of them distinctly and separately. You know, uh, D&D Fifth Edition does this sort of in a weird way. Everybody's good at combat, and everybody has other skills. Those aren't the same resource pool. You have proficiencies. You have combat widgets that you get to do. They're separate. You get to do them both, and you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. A lot of point based RPGs like Hero System or and so on. Well, you do. Combat skills are in the same bucket as all the other skills. And though if you want to be an archaeologist, you're not as good at combat. And Starfield has a little bit of that too. And thus all those systems have to somehow be the same value and the same worth, and they typically aren't. Um, as my friend put it in Baldur's Gate, just be good at combat, because if you fail all the skill checks, you're still gonna have to fight someone, and so you're always gonna have to fight. And the same thing is true in Starfield. Ultimately, you should just beef your ship skills and beef your combat skills, and you will mostly be okay. through most of the game. Now, again, it's not to say there's no reason to take those skills unless they're duds, but um, but there really isn't a good reason to take the vast majority of skills. Of the 80 some odd skills, there's probably in any given playthrough a dozen. And the problem is that dozen is the same every playthrough. You should probably take the security. You should probably take a combat skill. You don't have to, but you should probably take it to keep up. You should take a couple of the tech skills so that you can do right. Should you take zoology? Only if you want to build, and you don't have to build, and there's no point in doing the building unless you just want to do it for its sake. So I think they missed a little bit on that. And I think, again, the reason is that they there was just a little bit of lack of forethought as to how these things all play together. Not saying that I'm a genius or some, my game is my ludography is zero. so so these guys have me beat, and certainly they do know what they're doing, and but I think there was a little bit of a weakness in some of that design. A little bit of, well, we'll throw this in and you get a bonus to doing these things which ultimately you don't, no one cares to do. Um, so I think maybe this is a weaker critique, this last one and this last couple. But I do think too many duds is huge. I think a lot of skills that do not have an impact and the ones that have an impact are boring. And I think there's not really that many play styles expressed in the skills, thus meaning no replays. Like my third character is going to look a lot like my first character. I just there's not a significant difference. Um, so So there you go. So that's about where I'm at. It's been over half an hour. This has gone well enough. I think we're still talking. I think we're still in a B. I mean, I enjoyed the game. I played 100 hours. Um, I'm probably going to continue to play just to see where the new game plus takes me. But I think the game sort of tapered off, right? I think it started as an A. You start filtering into A minus. I think as you go, you realize, well, eh, it went from this is great to this is good to this is fine. What was that? I think ultimately it is. There you go. Hold on. There's my quote. It's fine, and I don't hate it, and I don't. But but if you were to come to me and go, well, it's disappointing, I would not disagree with you. If you were to, you know, yeah, I would, I could see that. And the worst part is a lot of people are just going to see this and go, well, he just bitched about and I didn't. Um, I do think the gun combat's fun. I do think the ship combat's decent. I do, but not great. I do think the main quest has a lot of high points. It's an overall a decent enough experience. You're not going to, if you spend $60 on it, you're gonna get 100 hours out of it. Um, it's fine. There you go. So you can put that on my gravestone. Here lies Chris. It's fine. It is what it is. It's fun. So that's it. Thanks a lot. We will jump out of Starfield. We'll be doing some new stuff in the coming weeks. I will talk to y'all later. Have a good day. Bye bye.